Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started as people filter in. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I think we have people in several different time zones, even in my own company, so that's cool. So it's really great. We kind of adjusted things, shifted it to lunch times because it does seem that a lot of us are getting a bit of Zoom fatigue, and we don't necessarily want to jump on calls after work and things like that. So let us know, give us some feedback if you appreciate, these times, kind of lunch meetings versus, our normal evening meetings. But for those of you who don't know me, who may be new, my name is Joel Hendershot. I'm the test architect at ESO here in Austin, and I'm one of the organizers of the Austin Automation Professionals, along with Julie and Evan, who are on the call today. It was mentioned there were some questions earlier about the whether or not we are going to be sharing these, but yes, the presentation is being recorded currently, and we are going to put those on our YouTube channel, just like we have been recently. But I do want to thank Applitools for giving us this platform to use. We're obviously making the switch from Zoom to GoToWebinar, and I mean, this is my first time using it, but the way it's organized and everything is great. So I just thank you. I just want to say thank you to them. I'd give a round of applause, but Adi and Gil, no one, you can't hear them, but everyone's clapping along because anyway, I just want to say thank you. We've had a great relationship with Applitools over, I think, the past 2 years. Was the first time we had them at our meetup, and they've been really great to us and helped us with a bunch of different things. So I just wanted to say thanks so much to them. But we do have a few people still coming in, but we do have a good crowd. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand the presentation over to Gil. Gil is actually one of the senior architects at Applitools, and he's going to come and talk to us about Cypress versus Selenium, which is a topic that gets discussed in my workplace on a regular basis. So thanks so much, Gil.
Thanks, Joel. Hi, Austin. I am so pumped up. I really wanted to visit your city this year, but Corona, COVID-19 probably won't happen in 2020. But hopefully, 2021, I'll be there at your meetups, maybe offline. Who knows? Anyway, Cypress versus Selenium. It's a hot topic. You go on Twitter, and there's the haters from both sides, and it's really horrible. And I don't want to go there, because the gist of my talk is both are great, they're just different, and I will show that, and hopefully you will come out here knowing that you can use this, and it depends on what you need. There's a GitHub repo with all the code you're seeing here, so you can look at it. The last slide will also have this repo, and this will be recorded, so you can see the URL. And if you want the presentation, feel free. This is the URL for this specific presentation. I'm Gil Tayar. My Twitter handle is Gil Tayar. Please follow me. I'd love that. I'm really, really old. I go all the way back to the 80s. I miss DOS and all that before there was Windows and everything. I've done so much. I don't want to get into that, but I even did a startup thing, co-founded a startup and everything. That made me realize that, well, I'm okay at management, but in the end, I was a developer, I am a developer, and I probably will die a developer, not so much a manager. One of the things I love doing since 2000, I think, even probably before, was testing the code that I write. It's a passion of mine, thinking about it, doing it, finding tools that do it, doing it correctly, trying out different ways. And this definitely led me to Applitools, which is a visual testing tool. We will talk a little bit about visual testing here. I will show how to do visual testing in Cypress, so that Cypress, which isn't a cross-browser tool, can be made into a cross-browser tool, at least visually. I'm also a developer evangelist, and I hate that word architect. I am an architect, it's true. I built something called the Visual Grid, the ultra-fast grid, but at heart, I'm a developer. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about Cypress and Selenium. So we're talking about what are Cypress and Selenium WebDriver, why should we care, how are they different from each other, and that's very important. And in the end, we'll talk about who wins. And as I said, nobody. But anyway, what are they? Oh, well, what are Cypress and Selenium WebDriver? Well, they're browser automation tools. I mean, duh. They automate browsers, but we'll see that they approach the idea of automating browsers in a different way, and that different way is going to make them, well, basically different. This is Cypress, sci.visit. Sci is this object, the global object, where you give the URL, and then you get a selector, and you type into the edit, and this is a to-do MVC, a to-do app, and then you toggle it and check that blah blah blah, etc., etc., and then you check that the to-do list doesn't have any descendants, i.e., there are no to-dos. Same thing for Selenium. Await driver. This is JavaScript. We'll talk about why JavaScript later. Await driver.get, and then you find the element, send keys to enter it, and then you click on something, etc., etc. We'll talk about the whole await, async await thing. We'll talk about that later. Okay, who needs browser automation tools? And I mean, this sounds like what are you talking about? But this is important. Okay, so what use cases do we have? What people need browser automation tools? We'll start with the non-standard ones, the developers. Developers need browser automation tools. Now, developers think in terms of the pyramid. They have the unit test, which checks like one class or one function. They have integration tests, which check more than one. And then they have their end-to-end tests, which check the whole system as a whole. That's the typical pyramid. I'm a fan of the diamond, where I have less unit and more integration, but for this talk, it doesn't really matter. The more important thing is the higher you go up the pyramid of testing, the more confidence you have in your tests, in the results of the tests. But unfortunately, you pay for that with it goes slower and slower, where units are measured in milliseconds and end-to-end tests are measured in tens of seconds, if not minutes. And the higher you go up, the flakier they become. Flakiness, as in my test ran once, and then green, and then red, and then green, 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 and then red, even if the code didn't change. Why? Because end-to-end tests, I mean, they run the whole system, and whole systems tend to be flaky. Users and browsers and everything, we're flaky. So the higher you go up, I mean, unit tests have basically zero flakiness. Integration tests, almost no flakiness. End-to-end tests, as we all know, when we run our test suite of end-to-end tests, we're talking percentages here. Yes, my suite finished with 95% failures or whatever. So the higher we go up, the more confidence we have, but the higher we go up, the slower things become and the flakier they become. This is why developers prefer unit integration tests. They want to run their tests very quickly, like in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, so that they know that the changes they made are okay. So they prefer unit and integration tests. But developers know and understand that unit integration tests are not enough. So they understand they must also test the product in whole. But that doesn't mean that they like it. I mean, for them, end-to-end tests where they test the whole system, where they run the whole system and then test it using browser, they don't like it. They do it as less as possible, and well, they try and basically avoid it. And which developers mostly deal with browsers? This is important because we're talking about browser automation tools, Cypress and Selenium. So who deals with browsers? And the answer is front-end developers. Back-end developers, when they're doing end-to-end tests, because they're testing only the back-end, they're mostly doing API calls. So they're doing HTTP calls to test their APIs. They don't care about browsers. So who does browser automation tools? front-end developers. And who are we? Front-end developers. What do we want? Browser automation tools. And in what language? And the answer is JavaScript. Front-end developers know only one language, and that is JavaScript, or TypeScript, which is like a superset of JavaScript with types, but it's basically JavaScript. So remember that front-end developers are the only ones using browser automation tools, basically, and they love JavaScript. Who else needs browser automation tools? Well, you. Test automation engineers. You're trying to break you're trying to make sure that every release is okay, so you test it using end-to-end tests using browser automation tools. And the big question is, why can't you do unit and integration tests? And the answer is, for one answer is, we do. Okay, we help developers, and we also write unit integration tests. That may be true in your company, but most companies, test automation engineers do not do unit integration. And why? And the reason is, for me, a bit unfortunate. Developers have this throwing things over the wall mentality, where they write code, test it like a little bit, and then they throw the release over the wall for test automation to run their tests on it. And because they're throwing the whole thing over the wall, QA engineers, test automation engineers, don't have access to the code. They only see the product as a whole, so they can only access it as a user would. They can't see the modules inside it. They basically access it as a user would. Okay, you know all this, but why is this important? And the answer is different mindsets. Developers, when approaching testing, assuming they do testing, and it's getting better. More and more developers are doing testing. Developers approaching testing approach it in a different mindset than testers. Let's go summarize everything. Developers like fast. They want their whole test suite to run in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Testers are more okay with long suites of tests. Developers have access to the code, so they can test the application from the inside, and so they prefer unit and integration tests. Testers don't have access to the code mostly, test the application only from the outside, and so must do mostly end-to-end tests. Developers love JavaScript because, as we said, when we're talking about browser automation tools and end-to-end tests with browsers, love JavaScript. Okay, testers come from a varied background, so they do a lot of Java, they do Python, C#, and yes, JavaScript. JavaScript is huge. It's rising in importance, but it's not only JavaScript. And developers, there are other browsers, they test only in Chrome. They don't care about the other browsers. That's for QA to find out. Testers have to do cross-browser testing because there are so many browsers out there, and not only browsers, there are so many platforms, like various widths that you need to test, and various iPad and iPhone, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so different mindsets from different people who use browser automation tools. So, how do they work? Let's talk about, and this is really important. Selenium works very differently from Cypress, or let's do it the other way around, because there are so many browser automation tools out there. Let's say that Cypress works very differently from all the other browser automation tools, especially Selenium. Okay, so we'll start with Selenium. Just to get you comfortable, probably some of this you already know. First of all, a bit of history, which is interesting. Selenium was started by Jason Huggins at 2004 from ThoughtWorks. He wrote Selenium, I think it's remote control. Not Jason is dead, Jason is alive and well. Now that I see it, Selenium remote control is basically dead. Simon Stewart at 2007 wrote Selenium WebDriver, and that is what we use today. Okay, when we say Selenium, we actually mean Selenium WebDriver. The name comes, and this is interesting, from mocking a competitor back in the days named Mercury. It actually was an Israeli company that did browser and Windows automation tools. And it was really heavy, and it was definitely closed source and very expensive, and basically didn't work very well. So they were mocking a competitor named Mercury. Why? Because Mercury, you can cure mercury poisoning by taking selenium supplements. Good choice of name. And it's not one tool, it's a suite of tools. Selenium WebDriver, Selenium Grid, Selenium IDE, etc., etc. Selenium, and this is important, is cross-language and cross-browser. It supports Java and PHP and Ruby and Perl and JavaScript and C#. And it supports all the browsers that we know and love: Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer. Well, we don't love Internet Explorer. And in terms of operating systems, all the major operating systems, Microsoft, Windows, Linux, and everything. And why does it support all these? And remember, Selenium was built for testers. So cross-language because testers come from varied backgrounds. Cross-browser because Selenium, testers need to test all those browsers. The architecture of Selenium, as some of you may know, is, let's say you have a test, and that test does find element or navigate, go to, I don't remember, navigate, I think. What that SDK does, what that library does, in whatever binding you're using, Python, Java, or whatever, it does an HTTP call to something called the browser driver. First of all, it runs the browser driver and then does an HTTP call using the Selenium protocol to the browser driver. It's an HTTP call which says, please navigate to this URL, basically. Now, the browser driver is different for each browser, for Chrome, for Safari, etc. Each one has a different browser. And when you take that, and the browser driver now talks to the browser using whatever protocol the browser uses. So if you're using Chrome, it's using CDP, Chrome DevTools protocol. If you're using Firefox, it's using Marionette. Using Safari, it's using I don't know what. So basically, and that is how it achieves cross-platform and cross-language. So the library for the language is very thin. It's basically a wrapper around the Selenium protocol. The most of the magic happens in the browser driver, and today browser drivers are written by the browser vendors themselves. It didn't used to be that way, but it's mostly that way today for Safari, for Firefox, and for Chrome, where the browser driver is from the vendor. Now, notice the two hops. There are two hops. These are three processes: the test, the browser driver, and the browser. And they're all talking via, network, TCP. There are two hops here, or three if you, depends on how you count. That's important for the future. Let's run a Selenium test. Now let's keep that present, and we'll go here. So this is an end-to-end test. I'm using Mocha. This is the test. Before I create the driver, and after I quit so that the browser closes, and before each test I navigate to this URL and add a to-do so that each of these tests can do whatever, etc. Notice all these async awaits. Let's run it. Run test.selenium, I think. Let's see. Okay, so you can't see the browser because it's popped up in another, but the browser is running, believe me. Wait, I think I can move it. There we go. We're done. Oh, why is that not working? Let's run it again because I did some stuff. Why? There we go. Ooh, the demo, I really tried it like 5 minutes before. The demo gods are not with me today. It's not navigating to. Let's try it again. Last time. Huh, that's weird. Okay. Well, you'll have to believe me that it's working. I really tried it. Maybe GoToMeeting is doing something here. I'm not sure. Hopefully, when we run Cypress, it'll work, because if not, that's a real shame, because probably most of you are familiar with Selenium. So let's hope. Okay. What is all this async await thing? What is all this await? First of all, it's a JavaScript thing. Most languages don't have that, and it's a way to JavaScript, when it's doing I/O. It used to do it when you did I/O in JavaScript. You couldn't just read a file and then continue on with the program. You had to read a file and then send a callback so that when the file is read, it continues, and that was pretty nasty. And so they invented this thing called async await, where every call to an I/O thing, something that does any I/O network or disk, you just await it, and magically it works. I don't want to get into it, but it's a sign that something is doing I/O. And obviously in in Selenium, we're doing a lot of I/O because of all that, hops between from the test to the browser driver, and from the browser driver to the browser. Okay, so pros. Browser support is really high. It supports any browser whatsoever. It's really cross-language. It has lots of language bindings. And test runner, you want to use Mocha, you want to use JUnit, you want to use Jest, you want to use XUnit. Feel free, because it's just a browser automation tool. The cons are it's asynchronous because it's doing all those hops, so it's slower. And sometimes it's flaky because of that, but there's also another reason that it's flaky, and we'll see that. I wish I could show that, but Selenium isn't working. But let's say we're getting the URL, we're getting the to-do MVC app, and I have this question mark which says delay the new to-do. So the new to-do edit will appear only after 1 second. And then we're doing a find element. Let's skip this thing. We're doing a find element. That find element won't find the new to-do because it's delayed by 1 second, so it will fail. So to deal with that, we have the driver.wait, which can wait until something happens. But usually we need to put it in explicitly. Yes, there is implicit mode, but a lot of people are saying, not sure why, don't use implicit mode. Okay, we've talked a lot about Selenium. Let's talk about Cypress. Cypress was started in 2015, so it's really modern, really new, by Brian Mann and Randall Kent. And it's more than just a browser automation tool, and this is the most important thing. It is a tool for front-end developers to do end-to-end testing. And while I'm saying it's a tool for front-end developers, it was built for them, but a lot of testers use it for other reasons. But it was built for front-end developers. And in some ways, it's the exact opposite of Selenium, and we'll see how. And it's a commercial tool, by the way. Cypress is a company. It's a company, a commercial company. So it's commercial with an open source freemium model. Most people use it in the freemium model. You can even say that it's open source with commercial editions. Your call. It's definitely open source. You can see all the code of Cypress, even contribute to it. They're really great people there in Cyprus, and they love contributions. And the target audience is developers. Let's hope that Cypress will run. Okay, Cypress, let's see a test. Okay, it's the same test as before. We have the describe and the it, just like previously. In Cypress, because it's a testing tool, you can't choose your test runner. You can't use Jest or Ava or whatever. There's only Mocha and there's only JavaScript. Just remember that. And you can, before each one, we visit the URL, and then we get the new to-do and we type something in, and then we get the label, check that there's a clean room here, and we toggle, and we check that the toggle is not checked. We click on the toggle and check that it's strike through because we just toggled a to-do, etc., etc. Let's see it running. I hope. Okay, Cypress open. Let's move it back here. First of all, notice it's interactive. You can run it in non-interactive mode. Don't worry, for CI purposes. But usually, what you want to do when you're developing the test, writing the test, you want to run it in interactive mode. So it shows you which files you want to run. You choose one, and where's the browser? There we go. And hopefully, oh please, no, it's not working for some reason. I think the problem is that the to-do MVC app just isn't there. Maybe surge.shell didn't. Well, that's the reason. Oh, man. Oh, that is really bad. Why is that? This has never happened. Search.sh was never flaky for me, but I am so sorry. But we, wait. Maybe I have an idea. I'll do a oh no, I don't have that. Let's see. I'll do a quick thingy here. Do I have? No. Okay, I'll take, let's see. Is this working? Yeah. There we go. I'm going to do a very quick, hopefully it'll work. Give me 2 minutes. CD visual grid to do. This is a local implementation of to do MVC. It's the same one, I hope. It should be. npm install. And okay, npm install. First time is always slow. Why is it building? Oh God. Okay. Do I need that? Probably not. npm start. Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's see if this works. Okay. I'm going to switch to the local version and run the test again. Yes. Okay. Okay. Mischief managed. Okay. Sorry about that. Surge.sh, which is the host we use for static content, and the to-do MVC in this case is down. So I switched to the local version. Let's see some interesting stuff. First of all, you can see that it's totally interactive. You can see the tests. It's not only that. Look at that. You can see exactly what you were doing during that test. This is great for debug, but it's better than that because you can see the state of the DOM, the state of the page on each command. This is amazingly, you would not believe how, and if you have a selector, it shows you what that selector is. You would not believe how useful that is in debugging your tests. You also have a visual locator here, so it shows you the command to get that at that element, but that's for me, it's nice for demos. But this one is really important because it can help you debug and troubleshoot the tests you have. You can see exactly what is happening and why something is failing or not. It even stores a video of the test running afterwards so that you can see exactly what happened during the test. It's really cool. Developer experience is really awesome because in Selenium and JavaScript you get nothing. Here, look, you get total documentation. Here you get command line completion of all the options that Cypress has. Really, in terms of developer experience while developing and while running the tests, Cypress is really amazing. Okay, whew, that made me nervous. I'll keep that. Let's go back. So, as we said, interactive mode is the bomb. Developers don't want to, and why is that? Why did they build that? First of all, they're developers, and developers, when they're building developer tools, well, they're building it for themselves, so they go the extra mile. And also, developers don't like end-to-end, and they don't want to spend time on that. They don't do it a lot, so they need help building the tests, and that is why interactive mode is the bomb. We've seen the element locator, we've seen the DOM history, very important, huge benefit. We've seen the IntelliSense. Well, if you're using Selenium Java, well, yeah, there's no real biggie. But if you're using Selenium JavaScript, the IntelliSense, the ability to code completion is really important. Documentation is absolutely amazing. Docs.cypress. Cypress. I'll get it in the end. .io. It's organized really well. You have core concepts which introduce you to things. You have guides for each one of the things. And the API, if we take, I don't know what, click, which is one of the more important things, you can see, look at how much documentation there is. It's really good. And if you have something that is missing here, it's just a pull request away from adding it, to helping them add it to their documentation. That's one of the reasons why it's so good, because everybody is contributing to it. So yeah, documentation is excellent. Developer UX, as we said, is fabulous. Developer user experience is fabulous. Let's talk about flakiness. How much time? Okay. Cypress knew and understood that flakiness is the heart of the problem. You know, you navigate to a page or you click on something and you expect instantaneously that something will appear. But as we all know, sometimes these things aren't instantaneous, and that's a lot of cause of flakiness, probably like 80 or 70% of that. So how do they solve that? And the answer is very easy. I can't show it because I don't have the delay new to do thing, but if I did that and it worked, what we would see that the side.get would have just worked even if that new to do would take 2 seconds or 3 seconds to appear. And why? Because they always retry. They retry for 4 seconds the side.get. And if you have not only side.get, not only selectors, but if you have a condition so that the label should have this and this CSS or whatever, they retry that for 4 seconds until it's either true or false. And you can actually control that. So you can do timeout like 6 seconds if you want to. So you can control that. Either you can control the default using a config file, or you can control it per command. So this is how they deal with flakiness, and there's another way that they deal with flakiness. Because this is built for front-end developers don't have to run the backend. They can run some mock of the backend. They don't really need to run the whole backend. And if you're just running the front end and mocking the backend and not doing any database calls or whatever, things are much faster. The UI is much faster to respond. And when things are faster, they're usually less flaky. So it's not explicitly solving the flakiness problem, but because they are targeting front-end developers, and we'll see that in a second, that they're also giving the ability to mock. So not only is it a testing tool that automates browsers, but you can also mock your server, give a total mock of your server so that your test runs without a server, and that solves the flakiness problem even better. How can they do that? How can they retry? Because retrying is you know, in Selenium, every retry is a hop to the browser driver and from the browser driver, etc. Cypress tests are weird. They don't run on your machine. Well, they do, but not in Node, not in Node.js. They actually run in the browser along with your application. This is weird. When you have a Selenium test, it doesn't run in the browser, right? It runs outside the browser and just automates the browser. What Cypress does, and that's weird, is it takes all your test code, opens an iframe inside your application, or well, outside your application, and just injects all your code and runs it in the browser alongside your application. And this is also part of why it's less flaky, because when you do a click, that click immediately goes to the application in a synchronous way. There's no mediator in between. It's all browser code, so that makes it much, much faster and less flaky. So it's synchronous access and synchronous and fast access to the page. This is really, really important. And as I said, they're important when dealing with flakiness. And we talked about that. Cypress waits until an element appears, an assertion is true, and it can do it in a very tight loop. Because it's so fast, so it doesn't have to wait like half a second like Selenium does. It can do it in milliseconds. But did you notice that there's no async await? That's weird, because if you're not a JavaScript person, then that's weird, because if Cypress waits until an element appears and an assertion is true, there is no way to wait in JavaScript without doing async await or callbacking. There's just no way to do that. But we didn't see any async await or callbacks. So how does this work? It does not do a busy wait where it does it in a loop, because that would kill the browser. The browser would do nothing else. So what it does is a strange and weird thing. It does what we call record and play. When we execute the Cypress test, it doesn't really execute it. When we run the code which says sci.get and sci.navigate and sci.this should and sci.click and all those, it doesn't really execute that test. What it does is it records the steps needed to do that test. Just records them, remembers them, and when the execution of the method ends, then it starts executing it. It's really weird. Now, it can execute it using async await, etc., because it remembered the commands to do it, and because it has all the commands, it can show them in the interactive mode and deal with it in a really nice manner. But it all is because of the record and play, and it's really weird because you can't do something like this. You can't get an element and then check if the text is something and do something, otherwise do something else. This is standard stuff in Selenium. You can't do that because you're not executing the test. You're just, when running the test, the Cypress isn't executing it, it's just remembering stuff. So when you do a sci.get, you're not getting an element, actually. It's still possible to do that. What you do is you do a sci.get label, and then you give it a callback, which says, when you do get it, I want to do this, okay, using the .then thingy. I don't want to get into that. This is advanced Cypress. Just remember, it's not regular test. Do I like this really Byzantine way of working? I don't know. Depends on what day of the week. But it definitely has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. So remember, fast access to the DOM. This is important, really fast and synchronous access to the DOM. And access to the DOM also enables some cool developer stuff. What do we mean? a lot of times, let's say you have every test needs to log in because every test wants to log in. Login is like navigating to the login page, to clicking the name and the user, clicking on all that thing. Every time you log in, it'll take like half a second, maybe even a second. But you're a developer. You can divert that. You can do a shortcut because you can access the developer code. You can access window in that application, and you can have something in that window which like shortcuts the login process without going through the login page. And a lot of Cypress developers, Cypress test developers, do that. So if they need to do something again and again and again, they just shortcut it by writing developer code specifically to log in without doing browser automation. This is amazingly important, and as developers, they appreciate it a lot. There is one limitation which is really, really bad. Really, really bad. Remember that Cypress runs your runs your application in its own iframe, and controls your iframe of the application. That means that you have multiple iframes and multiple windows and pop-ups and whatnot, social network logins. That's a problem. There are like weird workarounds, but they're not really nice. So buyer beware. If your app uses a lot of iframes and pop-ups and not just for a little thing, check first if you can handle that limitation. If not, well, Cypress isn't for you. So check before check before you buy. Okay, as I said, Cypress also supports mocking, etc. And the important thing about Cypress, and it used to be true, Cypress is not cross-browser. It used to be that it worked only in Chrome, but it doesn't work but now it also works in Firefox. It's pretty new. Not so much. Well, yes, Chrome, yes, Firefox, but what about IE? What about Safari? What about iPad, etc.? And the answers that Cypress gives is, well, you don't really care about that anymore. Functionally, all these browsers are the same. So if you run your tests in Chrome, they'll probably run in Safari and whatever. And I have to say that I tend to agree, except for one thing. And that one thing is visual. Visually, your application looks very different if it's in an iPhone and an iPad because your application is responsive. It works with different widths and looks different from different widths. So you really want to test that. And for that, you have visual testing. There are some common open source visual testing tools, but the good ones are commercial, and obviously Applitools is one of them. I want to show you a test that checks that to do MVC app. I'll switch it to localhost 3000. There we go. So we add a new to do, and then we take a snapshot of the first page, and then we toggle one of them and take a snapshot of the toggle, and then we clear all the completed and we take a snapshot. So we have 3 snapshots of our test. Let's run that. npm run Cypress. npm run Cypress. Yes, thank you. There we go. This is the visuals. Now we're running the test. Okay, notice that we're done, but it's still doing this whole thingy. Why is it? Because it's uploading, well, not exactly the screenshots, we'll talk about it in a sec, but it's uploading the screenshots to Applitools eyes and checking out the diffs. Okay, it should end in like 30 seconds. If you're in the US, because the servers are in the US, oh, of course there are diffs because, well, I changed the application, but that's fine. Let me accept all the changes. Okay, so you can see here the first test is one to do. The second test is one to do with cross-browser, and this third test is no to-dos because I cleared the completed. Notice that there are diffs here, okay? So you can see the diffs. You can either accept or reject them. I don't want to go into that. But you talked about cross-browser, and this is running under Chrome 84, which is it's our browser, which is true. But we can tell Applitools, can you run this in all these browsers, please, with different widths and different heights? We have Chrome and Firefox, but we also support IE, Safari, iPad, iPhone, Android, you name it. We mostly have it. We're running it again here. Okay. Notice that the previous test took 30 seconds. This test, demo God's willing, will take the same amount of time, about 30 seconds. But the amount of screenshots we're taking is like 10 times more. And why is that? Because it's not really creating screenshots. It's uploading the DOM of the page and all the resources, the CSS, the images, etc. And the visual grid, the ultra-fast grid, is taking screenshots of them in Chrome and in Firefox and in IE and this width and this width and this width, and it's doing it in parallel in the cloud. So we get all these Firefox, Chrome, IE, whatever, in all different widths, okay, at the same time, so we can check our application in various widths and do, valuable cross-browser testing, even using Cypress. Okay. So Selenium, cross-browser. Cypress only Chrome. Don't worry, you have visual testing. Selenium is cross-language. Cypress only JavaScript. Selenium cross-just runner. Cypress only Mocha. Selenium is a bit slower. It's not slowest. And Cypress is really fast. The target audience is different. Versus developers. It's less flaky. Cypress is less flaky, and Selenium is a bit more. But people handle that. The developer UX in Cypress is excellent. And there is no developer UX in Selenium. Etc., etc., etc. Just remember the bad iframe and pop-up support in Cypress. Please don't forget that. Which do you choose? And let's do a decision tree. Do you have to do cross-browser testing? Well, is visual cross-browser testing enough? And today it is. Go with Cypress, with Applitools Visual Grid or any other solution. No, it's not. Go with Selenium. You have to go with Selenium if you want functional cross-browser testing. Are you running hundreds of tests? Yes, go with Selenium Grid or buy Cypress Commercial, which enables you to run multiple of them in parallel. You're not running hundreds of tests, go with Cypress. Are you a tester? No, go with Cypress. Yes, I don't know, try Cypress, maybe you'll like it. Anyway, thank you very much. This is the GitHub repo, this is the link to the presentation, and I will be accepting your questions. Joel.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for that presentation. We do have some coming up that did come up. So one person mentioned that they think C# is asynchronous and supports async await as well as JavaScript, and yes, it does. So yes, that is correct. C# does support async await. So one of the questions is, how does Cypress work against React apps, or is there a difference between that and any other modern application framework?
Cypress doesn't care. I mean, it's an end-to-end browsing tool, so it doesn't care, and it works with React, Vue, Angular, Vanilla JS, whatever. But as I said, because Cypress has access to the DOM and to the functions in the DOM, you can actually, let's say, if you have a Redux store, access the Redux store and do actions in the Redux store, like log in, etc., without needing to do them via the UI. But again, you can do that with Angular, Vue, whatever. So it's definitely, Cypress does today have the ability to do what is called component testing. This was popularized by Jest, but now Cypress also has the ability to do that. I think in React definitely, because it's the major framework today, but also I guess in React and Vue, in Vue and Angular, sorry.
Okay, great. So another one was asking, Hernan was asking, is Cypress allowed to test basically app mobile, so like React Native, things like that? So basically these browsers in web views and stuff.
That's an easy answer. No, absolutely zero. There is no Appium equivalent. Selenium has Appium, which enables you to use the Selenium API to drive mobile apps. There's nothing like that. Cypress is web browser through and through.
Okay, cool. Now, one
Good
person,
question.
yeah,
I need to add it to my presentation.
yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
a good one. Yeah. Somebody mentioned about like Selenium 4 and Selenium IDE coming back. Have you heard much about that?
Yes, actually, Applitools was one of the big helpers in having Selenium IDE come back. Selenium IDE is much improved today. Back then it was a dead project, and Applitools revived it, and now it's like useful again. What was the other one? Selenium.
Well, I think it was with Selenium 4 was when they were talking about they were
Oh,
going to
Selenium 4.
release.
Well, yeah, Selenium 4 is interesting in that, I mean, in terms of what capabilities it has, it's not that big of a difference, except for the ability to go directly to Chrome using Chrome DevTools protocol. But what is interesting is that it's standard-based. So remember that process where Selenium talks to the browser driver using the Selenium protocol? It's not called the Selenium protocol anymore. It's a standard W3 protocol that defines, like forever, the protocol between any test runner and the browser driver. This is great, and it's a huge work that the Selenium community did, and I think it's going to be really important. Yep. So Selenium 4 is standards compliant. Yay.
Okay. I do see a hand raised in the attendees list. If you have a question, you can either put it there or you can ask in the chat. I'm watching both. Alan, I think we covered iframes. He asked, what if it contains iframes? I think we covered that. If you need anything else, let us know.
Problematic.
Yeah. Okay, would updates to browser versions and or their specific respective drivers affect Cypress in the same way they do Selenium?
Okay, let's answer the easy one. Drivers, and the answer is no. It does not use Chrome driver or Edge driver or Gecko driver or whatever, because it has, well, it's not even a protocol, because it injects your test code into the browser. It doesn't need any driver whatsoever, so it's all built in, whatever. In terms of versions, well, it took the easy way out, because it basically runs whatever version you have on your machine, and it also comes with a built-in Chrome, so that you're less prone to like differences in versions. Although the differences in versions today of browsers are really minuscule. So the answer is it works on whatever browser you have on your machine, and also comes with a built-in browser so that you can be less inherent to like different variations of browsers.
Yep. Adam asks, so okay, we use Cypress and are starting to incorporate testing web components and MFEs. Do you have insight into Selenium support and Cypress support? I'm not really sure what that question is. Do you?
Do I have anti?
Do you have any insight into Selenium's support and Cypress versus like when testing components? You did cover that Cypress does test components.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Selenium is Selenium. Well, I think both have a very big community. I'm guessing that Selenium is still the larger community, but I'm not sure. So my guess is that any answer you have will probably be answered somewhere on the net. In terms of Cypress, I know Applitools has the Test Automation University, where we have like free online courses generated by the tester community. The Cypress course was written by me. It was lots of fun. And the Cypress, we have a Slack channel for all of the courses, and the Cypress course channel is really nice, where you can go in, ask your questions. Usually you get like 10 answers immediately. Do that. It's really good support.
Okay. And MFE equals micro front ends. I haven't heard that.
Oh wow, that's a big topic. I don't think it affects. I don't think it affects Cypress. Cypress, again, doesn't really care how you build your application, just like Selenium.
Right. So one person asks, is there any way in Cypress to do something like test that the data on a page matches specific CSV file? I'm assuming you would just do that through your general JavaScript programming. Pull that in, adjust your, tagged its and all that stuff. One of the things that's cool in Mocha, we do this quite a bit. If you have an array, you can create, like, do a for each on all the elements in that array, and so you can test all of those individually. So that's something you can just do in Mocha and JavaScript.
Yep, definitely.
Any idea if Cypress will be expanded to other languages in the future?
Knowing the people involved, I would guess that the answer is a huge no.
Right.
No.
Okay, that's what I figured as well. But yeah,
maybe Safari. In terms of browser, maybe Safari. I'm guessing that they will never do IE. It took them like 2 years to do Firefox. So and IE is ancient. So maybe Safari in terms of cross-browser. I don't know. But definitely nothing else other than JavaScript.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead. The important thing is why? Because your test is running in the browser. So no way. Oh, they do support TypeScript, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that actually is pretty recent. Before you could kind of fudge your way through it, but yes, it is completely TypeScript compatible now. That's right. So we are at 1 o'clock. If you have about 5 more questions, we have just 5 more minutes or so. We have a couple more questions, and you guys can stay on here. Cool. Great. So from a job searching perspective, how does the opportunities look between both Cypress and Selenium?
Job?
Yeah, so like if you're going into a job interview and say, I have front-end testing experience, do you feel like it's weighted either way?
I don't know. But given that I live in Israel, I'm not sure the answer, even if I knew it, would be relevant to Austin, Texas.
Right.
So I'm sorry I can't answer that.
So what I would say is generally, I mean, especially if you look at both, one of the benefits so it's good to be able to have both, I would say, on your resume, and be able to articulate, even if you have only worked in one or the other, because when I interview a candidate and they say I work with Cypress, that's kind of a boon to me because they're working on the most modern technology, but at the same time, an individual who is very well versed in Selenium is kind of a backbone kind of character. So, like, I would say look at both, but being able to articulate why one versus the other, I think, is as important as having the experience in it, personally.
Totally agree.
How does Cypress handle Shadow DOM?
Whoa, good question. I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that somehow. Maybe Joel, if you can. Sure. But yes and no. I mean, even if it doesn't support, and my guess is that it does, but even if it doesn't, Shadow DOM itself is accessible via JavaScript. So you can go to an element that it has Shadow DOM and like peek into it. Okay. So even if Cypress doesn't do that, because Cypress runs in the browser, you can just use JavaScript to access the DOM using regular JavaScript tools and peek into it and do whatever you want. So the answer is I don't know, but absolutely you can do that in a non-standard way.
Yep. Good. And I think this is the last question, although maybe one of the biggest. Maybe quick. Who knows? So when thinking on a new project, would you think it is better to start with Cypress or Selenium? And I think the decision tree kind of covers that.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. It depends on so many options. I think you have to think of the, if you want to go cross-browser, forget about Cypress. If you don't want to use JavaScript, forget about Cypress. Otherwise, I would do like a small POC, take your app, write, like 5 tests in Selenium, 5 tests in Cypress, try it out and see what works for you. And please, 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 if your application has iframes and pop-ups, test that in Cypress, because I don't want you going into this huge Cypress project and then realizing midway, oh my God, it doesn't support, iframes. So please try it.
Yep. I would also kind of add to that, as you mentioned, like every team is different, every company is different, and situations are different. We have a lot of ours in Protractor and Selenium, but we also have a very robust library that we started from. So it's really easy, especially if we're dealing with Angular applications, which most of ours are, to be able to, as well as we've also expanded our like component object model is what I call it, but like a lot of our components already exist, whereas so a lot of that is like it's friendlier, right? However, we have started brand new projects that don't follow our component library and things like that, and so all of those have gone Cypress. So it's a little bit of give and take on those, but I mean, Cypress is really easy to get things up and running really, really fast. That's what we found.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's it for all the questions, and some really good questions in there. So.
Yep, definitely. Thank you. Sorry about the shadow DOM. I'll check.
Excellent. Any other questions before we sign off here? Doesn't look like it. Do you have anything else for us, Gil or Adi?
Remember the Test Automation University course? If you're really interested in Cypress, I think it's not bad. It can get you into it quickly, and it's really fast to go through it. So go there, Test Automation University.
Yeah, I want to copy that, piggyback on that as well. It is a great thing, especially if you're a fairly new automation engineer. Test Automation University is fantastic. That's one of the things that I point my junior folks to all the time. There's everything from Cypress to different languages to performance testing. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. So it is a great opportunity. And what was the Slack channel? What was the channel of the Cypress Slack?
Oh, it's the Test Automation University Slack channel. You can find it on the Test Automation University site.
Okay.
Definitely.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us. We will be hosting our next meetup. I think are just confirming that it will be with Bodium on August 27th. I'm not sure if it's going to be I think they're in Finland, so I'm assuming it's going to be another lunchtime one. And then we have Applitools and Angie Jones coming back, I believe, September 24th. So we have a couple of really cool meetups coming up. I know this one was a bit last minute when we were trying to get all of our links and stuff, because we were switching from Zoom to go to webinar and different things. So just want to thank you guys so much for being patient with us. I want to thank Applitools for allowing us to use their GoToWebinar platform. Thank Gil for taking the time. It's evening there, so thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it.